want to welcome our audience and I want to welcome our panelists to our Q&A session focusing on characters today. My name is Melissa Braden and I will be your trustee moderator through this session and I'm looking forward to it. A little known fact about me, my first year out of college, I was a TV news reporter until I decided I did not have the chops for it. But this is a fun way to kind of jump back into that world and get to know my fellow authors and panelists a little bit better. As you all are coming in and joining us, I want to direct you to the chat bar on the side. If you don't see it, if you just click the little button on the bottom that says chat, it will pop up. It's a fun place to kind of exchange ideas and comments about things that we are talking about here on the screen. Look at the bottom, it says the to section, it tells you who you're sending your message to, so you can choose hosts and panelists, or if you want everyone to see it, make sure everyone is selected. Another tip I have for you is if you'd like to see everyone a little bit more clearly, if you go to gallery view and make sure that that is selected, that kind of gives you a better glimpse of everybody who is speaking. I have some questions that I will be asking our panelists, some that they have supplied me, some that I have on my own, but I definitely encourage you to pop any questions you have into the chat or the question box, and I'll try to keep an eye on that. More specifically at the end when we bring everybody back and speak together. But I encourage you to participate. We love a lively audience. And one last thing I want to tell you is that there is one of my favorite things, a sale happening. And so if you want to pick up any of the books from the authors that are participating on the bookathon, keep an eye on the chat, and I'm sure Bold Strokes will be dropping some information about that sale. You can also just head over to the Bold Strokes website and see for yourself the authors that are participating, and then jump to their books, and bam, you have some books that were a little bit cheaper this weekend than they normally would be. And what do we all want? More books, always. So I think if it's okay with my panelists, I'd like to start with Anne Shade. So if I could ask the others of you, if you just pop your cameras off, and then we will bring you back up one at a time to chat. And how are you today?
I'm good. Experiencing a nice heat wave in Iowa where we are for the weekend. It's lovely 40
Oh,
degrees almost. So,
listen, we will take it. First of all, I want to introduce you to everyone by reading your bio. This is Anne Shade, pronouns she, her, and Anne has a passion for writing stories about women who love women across many genres with one common factor: BIPOC representation in all of her main characters. Anne is the author of 8 sapphic romances: Femme Tales, Masquerade, Love and Lotus Blossoms, Her Heart's Desire, Securing Ava, Three Wishes, and Leather, Lace, and Locks, and The Blessed. So she has collaborated on 2 Bold Strokes books anthologies as well: In Our Worlds, Queer Stories from Black, Indigenous, and People of Color Writers, and My Secret Valentine, 3 romance novellas. When Anne isn't writing, she's daydreaming about plans for her future bed and breakfast, which we all would love to come and experience in the future. And I personally can't wait for that. So today, Anne, tell us, what book are we going to be discussing before we jump into the character?
my current release, The Blessed.
All right, and can you just tell us I can read the blurb, but I think it's better to hear from you. Can you just tell us a little bit about the book itself?
It's a book about some Black girl magic. There is Suri who finds out that she is from a family of supernatural women who guard the gateways to the Orisha gods or the African gods, Yoruba gods. And she is now in the fight not only for her family's legacy, but also for her life, as she has drawn the attention of the Queen of Demons, Lilith. And her love interest is Layla, and Layla is a Cambion, which, if you don't know what that is, that's a half demon, half human, who is 200 years old, has spent her life alone on her own, um, and is now finding out that she has been um, gifted with the ability to guard or to protect Surrey, or the job with protecting Surrey. So it's a kind of a clash in personalities that kind of turns into some hotness. But then there's some world saving going on as well.
A little bit supernatural, a little bit bodyguard trope. Am I somewhere in the
Exactly,
right? We're kind
exactly,
of combining the
exactly.
both
Yeah.
worlds. I think that's amazing. So we're going to talk a little bit about Layla specifically today, correct? So
Yes.
I want to just back up to before we had a Layla, what was your inspiration for this character?
So Layla came to me, well, the story came to me at a time where there was a lot of crap going on with the country during the pandemic, during the first, this current person's reign over the country.
Yeah.
I believe in call him president, but during that first time, and then there were the Black Lives Matter movement was being really at the height of what was going on, the protest, and the Say Her Name campaigns were just becoming too much. With Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, all those. So I was a very angry person,
Yeah.
and I became very um, dark. I couldn't even write. What I did write were very dark, very angry poems. So I needed to find a way to dig out of that and to kind of bring myself out of that because it was just getting deeper and deeper. And the blessed came to me, and Layla's character in particular, to me, embodies everything that represents Black women and what we've gone through in history, from how we were treated as slaves and until now when we've become somewhat the I won't say saviors, but we become the voice of reason within our community. We become the one to kind of step up and fight for what's important in our community. So that's Layla came to me as that representation, and she kind of just as she saved Surrey, she kind of saved me from being in a really dark place.
Wow. I very much enjoy your answer, and especially hearing that it had a personal connection to you. I think that breathes such life into the work and the character specifically. It sounds like on her particular journey, you know, Layla has a lot that she learns. Can you talk to us about a specific lesson that she had to learn along her way?
Yes. First thing Layla had to learn was that she couldn't let her anger control how she dealt with situations, how she dealt with because and I won't go into details or spoil anything, but the first thing that happens to her is very violent and gut wrenching. And it's what actually brings out her powers, her abilities, and how she finds out who she is and what she is. And she could either let that anger and what happened to her take over and change her fully into a full on demon, or she can look into the light as her mother has taught her. Her mother spirit has taught her to look into the light and to see the lightness of light and love and to hold on to that and not let the darkness take over. So that was the first lesson she learned. The next thing she had to learn was how not to be alone. She spent 200 years. She's not immortal, but she does live a slower, longer life, being that she's half demon. If she fully embraced her demon side, she could become immortal, but she chooses to embrace her demon and her human side equally. And that lesson has left her lonely because people outlive her, or she outlives people. She outlives people close to her. Other than her father, who is a demon, she has no one else in her life. And so when she meets Suri, and she's now having to like accept not only someone caring for her,
Mhm.
but her having to care for someone, having to not just care for her community or her people, but someone, and have that person's life in her hands, and to protect them, and realize that she has also the ability to love them, and she has to learn that she doesn't have to be alone. She can be with someone, she can be loved, and she can give love in return.
Oh, I love that. I love that arc, and I love the learning that she goes through in that particular lesson. I know that for a lot of writers, music can be inspiring. It can It can be assigned to characters, to couples. If you were to think of a song that comes to mind when you think of this particular character, Layla, which song would that be?
One song in particular comes to mind, and if you've seen me talk about music, and I always talk about B. Steadwell, I love her. Uh, B. Steadwell has a song called "Witch,"
Okay.
and I love that song. And it is so Layla in how she fell for Suri. And I got the words here.
Awesome.
I'll just read a little bit. So it's I was a god, I was immortal. I was a star just burning in the sky. I was the sun, I was the darkness. I was so high, I was so high. Then she crept in from the dawn. I had no warning. She's calling, and I'm falling, and into the dream of her. I fell, and she rose up from the deep. She is a priestess. Make me need this, know my weakness, and now I am trapped in her love spell.
Ah, I love that.
So yeah. So that reminds me of how she fell for Suri.
Well, she sounds like such an interesting character to me. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's discovering on her journey who she is in terms of
Yes.
she's half demon. That's something the
Well,
reader
she
gets to
discovered
experience
that
with
early
her.
on. She discovered
Okay,
that
early in the
early
book.
on that she's a half demon. What she's now discovering is how to be the person she is, but also feel, which she hasn't
Yeah.
had to do. She's felt for the Black community. She's been a savior for the Black community through the centuries that she's lived, through the decades that she's lived. She's lived through slavery, emancipation, civil rights. She's lived through Jim Crow law. She's lived through all of that. And she's also lived through lynchings and things that happen. And she
Yeah.
actually becomes a Black angel in the darkness, saving her people. And now she's learning that she doesn't have to be this vengeful being, that she can just be a loving and caring being who now she's realizing that this is what I was brought here for. This is what I was made for, was to protect this being who is protecting our faith in our souls.
So an internal journey and then
Yes,
understanding her own destiny as well.
yes,
Well,
exactly.
is the book available now?
Yes, it is available now, ebook and hard copy.
All
Um,
right.
of course, I didn't bring one with me.
So
I got
if
to
you
bring it
haven't
over
seen the
again.
cover, it's a gorgeous cover. I recommend you at least pulling up the page so you can take a look at that. And then while you're there, hey, hit buy and pick up the book and
There
get
you
to
go.
know Layla and go on the journey with her. Well, Anne, thank you for talking to me.
Thank you.
Hope we'll bring you back in a little bit with the group.
All
And
right.
yes, definitely pick up The Blessed. Everyone do that now. Okay, next. Oh, I just lost my headphone. Next, I'm going to bring up Emma Benfield. Michelle, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. Hi, Melissa. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good,
So where
thank you.
are you right now? You're quite a ways from me.
I'm dead in the centre of the United Kingdom, about as centre as you could get. Yeah, a place called Wolverhampton. Kind of
All
chilly.
right.
Yeah.
All right, we love to see it. So I want to tell you a little bit about Michelle. Michelle, who writes under M.A. Benfield, is stranded on that little island off the coast of France known as the United Kingdom. She is fond of the ocean and lives up to the British stereotype by drinking tea constantly and talking about the weather. She is a hopeless romantic who loves writing and reading about women loving women, and she's working on her fifth novel. So thank you so much for being here with us, Michelle. So I want to jump right into it. So tell us about one of your favorite characters and why they are interesting to you.
Oh, I don't know. I think I'm a bit of a cliche. Well, maybe not, but like to me, it feels a bit of a cliche. I love sort of those characters that are like the strong, silent, moody, slightly emotionally damaged characters.
Right.
They're ones that I like to read about. I've got in some of my novels, I've got some main characters that fit that kind of trope too. I think it's sort of the sort of emotionally closed thing. It makes it just even more rewarding when you get to the end of a journey or an arc with a character, and then by the end of it, they've been warmed up by true love and the love of a good woman, and sort of become more emotionally open. And I think that's just so rewarding for me. I love to read it and I like to write it too. And it's kind of odd because I'm not that kind of person in my life, although I'm very British. You would think I would be that kind of person because we have that reputation. But I'm like a right chatterbox, and I'm that person that's always asking you what you're thinking. So I'm definitely not that person in my life. And I'm not with a person like that either, oddly. But I think it's a bit of just a guilty pleasure for me, you know, that kind of character that's strong, silent, hot, and needs a bit of thawing out. Yeah.
Well, I'm like you. I definitely enjoy that kind of character where we see them start in one place and then by the end of the book they're somewhere entirely new, and it's usually at the hands of the person who's come into their lives and changed them for the better in a way that nobody else quite could. And so I think we're similar in really bonding with those kinds of characters. Now, when you're describing a character like that, is there a particular character in mind that you're thinking of?
God, there's so many, isn't there? I mean, there's a few. Missouri Vaughan writes those characters really well. Radcliffe, our big boss, writes those characters well. I mean, I enjoy them in a lot of the books that I read. I mean, from my own books, there's definitely characters like that. In Never Be the Same, there's a character called Casey, who's one of the main characters. She's a driver, very sort of salt of the earth, working class, who's had a bit of trouble and trauma in her life, and she has to drive this annoying actress around London town, and over the course of the novel gets thawed out in that relationship, and sort of begins to sort of trust and like and that kind of thing. And it's delicious, I think, when someone goes on that kind of journey and just lets themselves be drawn out. In the in the book One Small Step, there's a similar character called Iris. I think I enjoy that character, and I quite often write those type of characters.
Yeah. So Iris and Casey, for those of you who would like to, in what book was Iris in again? You just said, but I want to make
No,
sure
one small step. Yeah, it's the
One
first book.
Small Step is where you can find Iris and Casey the driver. I like the sound of that, driving the actress around and being the kind of buttoned up type, which is enjoyable to me. So it sounds like, you give your favorite characters a few hurdles, and it sounds almost like there are internal hurdles and emotional hurdles as to who they are and what they want to reveal about themselves. Um, so that's something that you strive for and enjoy, yes?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that just loves a bit of angst, I think.
Yeah.
I think the course of true love doesn't run smooth, does it? And it
hmm
certainly shouldn't if you're a romance writer. It would be a very short book.
Right.
So I really enjoy that. The Romance Lovers Book Club, which is the book that I wrote with Tony Logan. We're doing a panel together next, plug.
Nice.
That there's a sort of character in that called Chelsea again. She's sort of very British, buttoned up. She's had bad relationships and some heartache in her family and life, and I think she just can't quite believe that she deserves to be happy, and it's just it's sort of odd. I don't know why they're always British, those type of characters. I like American characters, but often the person that's got those sort of characteristics is the British one. So I don't know what that is. It's always the Brits that need to be thawed out. But it just seems really sweet to me if you go through that amount of angst and sort of, emotional upheaval to then just open yourself up to someone at the end. It just seems even sweeter, the happy ending, when it comes after a bit of angst along the way.
Like a bigger payoff, yeah.
I said I was hopelessly romantic. It's just sadly very true. I'm sorry.
No, I think there's something to it. It's almost like the longer that emotional journey is, that reveal is a bigger reward when we get to kind of see them come fully into their own after being so removed and so pulled into themselves. Now, I know we've kind of gone through our official questions, but if I were just to tack one on, what do you think that is about the difference between the Brits and the Americans? Do you think it comes down to the British having a bit more decorum and etiquette being so prevalent in the culture that those characters lend themselves more to withholding?
I don't know, actually. I've never really thought about why they were so British. I mean, it is a bit of a stereotype, isn't it, that British people can be a bit uptight, not a good stereotype. So I think it can be true, but I think it's more, it's not about their Britishness. It's more about having had difficulty, I think, and emotionally just being very guarded. And I think the other characters are just so important on that journey too. Like they might be but the person that thaws them out, the person that loves them enough to persevere when they're being closed down. I think that's fantastic too, isn't it? What a great combination of characters that is to make a romance from. So I like all the characters, the one that's buttoned up and the one that does the unbuttoning.
Yeah.
You're rude. There is a bit of that in the books too, of course, but I mean emotionally. But,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you can't go wrong, even if you're dealing with the stereotype, because I think as Americans, we very much romanticize the British and the accent and the culture and everything. So I think you'll pull in the readers that way either way. So the books that you touched on with Iris and Casey, they're available now, yes?
yeah, Bold Strokes
I think.
website online, or yeah.
And if you check out the chat bar right and there's Sandy Lowe on the spot with the link for everybody to hop through and check out Michelle's books. There we go. Is that the newest?
That's the newest one, the Romance Lovers Book Club. Yeah.
The Mo Romance Lovers Book Club, everyone, and definitely check out and watch those characters come into themselves and reveal more because we know that that's a favorite for Michelle to write. Michelle, thank you so much for speaking with me. We'll bring you back up in just a little bit. And let's see. We're going to Kathy next. Kathy, are you out there? Kathy to know.
Hi, yeah.
Hi, where are you today? We're asking everyone because everyone's so many different places.
Yeah, I'm in North London at the moment.
North London. I wish I too were in North London right now.
I mean, it's very cold and rainy, so you're not missing anything. Don't worry.
I'll take your word for it. I just want to introduce you formally to our audience and read your bio. Kathy lives in the UK with her wife and daughter and has published 3 novels with Bold Strokes Books. When not writing, she enjoys being outside in all kinds of weather, whether it's cycling, walking, playing football. Pronouns are she, her. So, Kathy, today we're focusing on one of your characters. Can you tell us a little bit about the book that your character is from?
Sure, yeah. So the book I'm talking about is my most recent release with Bold Stroke Books, which is called Turning Point. And this is the story of Asha, who is returning to her hometown after her father falls very ill. And whilst there, she bumps into Jodie, who she was at school with. And Jodie was not very nice to her at school. And so Asha is not very pleased to be running into her again. But they get to kind of know each other over the course of the book and may or may not fall in love. Who knows?
You don't know this about me, but reunion romance is my absolute favorite. When they have a past and there's someone's been wronged and then they come back together on not so happy terms. So I'm writing down the title of the book now for myself. And hopefully our audience is doing the same. So let's get back to the character. It was Asher, yes?
Jodie, actually.
Oh, Jodie is the character that we're focusing on. Well, tell us a little bit about Jodie. What is Jodie like?
So she at school was very much like the top dog. She was one of the kind of the cool girls who's kind of admired. And then once she's finished school, that kind of social kind of status that she got there kind of disappears. It doesn't not quite so relevant anymore. And she's kind of like, I think, sort of forgotten about what she was like at school. And then meeting Asha really kind of makes her confront what she did at school and the fact that actually she wasn't particularly nice to Asha and a whole host of other people. And so she has to kind of like confront that because in her head, her school days were kind of perfect and she was great and everyone loved her. And then she has to confront the fact that actually that wasn't the case.
Oh, I love it. So you can't ever escape your past, can you? Especially in a book. Books never let you escape the past. You gotta reflect and it leads to character growth, which is always fun as a reader for us to experience and see that character grow and change and become a better person, right? Especially for the romantic partner. So when we're talking about Jodie, what is it that you personally like or don't like about the character? I mean, you can interpret that any way you want and tell us why.
So I think the thing I like about her is that she is coming to terms with what she might have done in the past that wasn't so great. So she is, when she's confronted with that, she doesn't just sort of push it away. She kind of takes it on board and stops and thinks, and in her very kind of awkward, bumbling, blundering kind of way, does try to make amends. So I like that about her. I like the fact that she's trying to like improve and trying to be a better version of herself. And she's got a very sort of self-deprecating streak, which is quite nice to write. So it gives her some quite kind of funny moments when she doesn't take herself too seriously.
Well, we love a good redemption arc, and I think intention goes a long way. And when a character wants to be better and wants to apologize and does it through humor, kind of, which is what you're describing, it's easy to win us over and get us on board. Is Jodie based on anybody that you know, or what was the inspiration?
I think probably not based on a specific individual, but I feel like just reflecting on my own school days, I definitely knew. I was kind of specifically talking about girls because we're quite good at this sort of thing. I definitely knew like girls who weren't particularly nice at school, but if you happen to see them in a different context with like a different group of friends, they suddenly seemed almost like a kind of different person. So there's something about that kind of really specific context that especially school gives you, uh, where you behave in a certain way and you've got like a kind of hierarchy imposed on you. And if you take somebody out of that context, often you see a side to them that you never really knew. And I think that's what happens to Asher in the book. She remembers Jodie as just being this like archetypal mean girl, and then she sees her, almost 10 years later in a completely different setting, and finds out that actually she's not entirely that person that she was back then. And I think that's something you can kind of relate to when you see people in different contexts and see totally different sides to them.
Yeah, yeah, I think context is everything, and kind of what you said, having the other people around and seeing her through their lens can certainly be enlightening, and it's fun to watch play out. Uh, you talk about Jodie's past, and she did some not so likable things that she's making amends for now. Is it hard to write a character who's done those things or has these unlikable characteristics or aspects to them?
I think it makes it kind of more of a challenge and more kind of interesting to write. I like writing characters that have flaws, that are kind of, fully rounded. Um, I think she has the kind of flaws, Jodie, I think that I hope lots of us can relate to, her kind of shady past, and that she's a crazy serial killer. It's that she's done the kind of things that we all might have done and that we all might reflect on about how we've kind of treated people in the past, and maybe we're not very proud of that now. So
Yeah.
I like writing about a kind of what I feel possibly quite a realistic arc that many of us might go through, and we think back and think like, oh, some of the things I did in the past, especially at school, make me sort of cringe now. And I'd quite like the chance to maybe make amends or make up for that.
Yeah, it's definitely universal. I could give you a few things I wish I hadn't done as well. I don't know if you're following the chat, Kathy, but Anne and Joni have decided that between you and Michelle, maybe one of you could write a rugby romance for them. They've noticed that you play football. We call it soccer here, same sport. But they're interested in a rugby story. So just know that there's call out there. Either one of you want to grab that. You might have a
I've
couple of,
played a bit of rugby, so I could have a shot at writing a
there you
rugby
go.
story. There we
Maybe
go.
this is for you. You've got a couple of built-in readers right here. Ready to go. So Turning Point, I don't know if you guys have seen, but there is a link there in the chat for you all to pick up Asher and Jodie's story and look for a rugby romance. Maybe one day, you never know, in the future from Kathy. So Kathy, thank you for talking to me. I'm gonna bring you back up in just a little bit and pick up the book, everybody. Run over, and it sounds like a good one. Jamie, are you out there? I'm going to bring you up next. Um,
Hey,
so true story. Jamie is currently a wandering traveler. You can usually find Jamie and their family in Colorado, yes?
yep, but not
But
now.
not today. That is not where you are today. You're coming to us from, tell us.
Today, Costa Rica. Yep.
All right, so we're all also jealous of you and and your travels. My bio I have for you, it says Colorado. We know that's not true, but I'll tell you the rest of it. Most days spent working as a veterinarian, maybe not today specifically, but in the past. Writing is a side gig, but also a true love. Hobbies include swimming, karate, dreaming about beach vacations, which maybe in Costa Rica you're getting a little bit of that, I don't know, and convincing random strangers to share their life story. Bonus points are given if they include a good romance, whether or not there's a happy ending. So, do all of those things still ring true? I stole your bio off of Goodreads.
Yeah, mostly. For this
Mostly.
year, I've been just traveling around. We were in Spain for 3 months and the United Kingdom for a couple weeks and California. We've been all over. It's been a
You're
busy.
you're having a fantastic year, it sounds like, at least in
Yeah.
terms of all the places you're getting to visit, which is awesome. Um, so I'm going to blindside you with some questions about your characters, but I know that you're awesome on the spot. And so today, we're talking about favorites. Is there one of yours that you've written that kind of rises to the top of the list and really resonates with you, either because they're similar to you or different in some ways? And can you tell us a little bit about a character like that?
I've got a question similar to this before, and my favorite character is actually a character that readers pretty unanimously did not like,
Okay.
which is, I like unlikable characters, characters that are flawed. So one of my books had a character, her name is Kate, and she was so difficult. And I was even frustrated. Like halfway through the story, I'm like, I'm so done with this person. But then, you kind of make that transition and you're like, ah, I love this person too. So I would definitely gravitate toward the complicated. Unlovable isn't quite the right word. The people that don't love themselves. Those are the
Flawed, yeah.
characters that I really root for the most, and I want that transition and that romance to make them love themselves as well as open up and really step into the person that I know they could be.
Well,
So
I think there's something to be said too. You said to a certain extent, certain readers didn't necessarily bond with Kate or didn't like her, at least in the beginning, maybe of her story. But I think there's something to be said for an impactful character. They don't always have to be warm and fuzzy and lovable to have an impact on us and for us to carry the character with us. And I'm like you, I like rooting for a character and for their transformation or not. If we're getting more specific about the character and maybe pulling back a layer or two, what would be a fear of Kate's?
well, I think a universal fear that many of us have is that we aren't lovable. So whatever flaw we have, in Kate's case, there were many, which is there's a line between wanting a romance to be almost fantasy. These perfect characters, these
Yeah.
perfect people that we could imagine, like, oh, maybe one day I could be like that person and I could have this fantasy romance and this wonderful life. And on the other side of that, there's us wanting to relate to a character and really root for them and feel for them and think, "Oh, I want this person to succeed because they've had a hard life, because they've gone through all these things."
Yeah.
So, the fun part of writing romance is that you can do both, sometimes in the same story. So, in the same novel, you can take a character who's, in her case, she had a history of abuse and she had eating disorders and she was gone through depression and she wasn't likable because she wasn't liking herself. But then over the course of the story, it's kind of a long-term love story. So she falls for this person, and it's not until about 15 years later that they are actually together. And in that span, the person stays with her as her best friend, always loving her, but she's not ready for romance. And so the
Yeah.
book doesn't come to the romance happy part until she's really at that spot.
And this may be a question for later in the book when she is at that spot, but I think love language is always super telling about a person. What would you say is a way that your character, Kate, in this instance, would express love or like to be loved, whether it's through touch or words of affirmation or acts of service? What kind of speaks to her?
I think in Kate's case, it's touch.
Yeah.
It's something she's most scared of. And
Mhm.
sometimes the thing that we want the most is the thing that is hardest for us to accept. So in her case, and in a lot of the books that I write, I like to pull different things. I
Yeah,
don't like to have the same love language. You like to create unique characters,
of
but I think in
course.
her case, it's touch.
Oh, that makes her super interesting, especially what you've kind of said about her before. And I know that just speaking about character in general, not necessarily Kate, but you've written books with another author, with Aurora Ray. And I wonder about the two of you collaborating and working together. How do you approach character? Does somebody have a jumping off suggestion for who they should be, and then you kind of get together and add layers to that character? Can you speak to that collaboration process?
Yeah, I can. I will say first, Aurora likes less complicated characters.
Okay.
So, and admittedly, she's better at writing things that are happier, and less complicated. And I gravitate more towards, the hard things, the difficult to express emotions, the things that I struggle with. I want my characters to struggle with because I want that success for them.
Yeah.
So we do tend to pick characters that are more like what we individually like. So Aurora's character in our joint stories that we've written a total of 4 together. And in each case, her character is, strong, independent, uh, maybe doesn't need a love story. And it often has her shit together. It's
Yeah.
like a pretty accomplished person all by herself. And my characters tend to be not. They don't have their life together. They're flawed in many ways often. But they're lovable and want love. So those are the people that I like to write
And how many books have the two of you written together?
for.
Four. And I think there we have a link there to the books if you all would like to check them out. And we gotta keep up with your travels and see how they inspire your writing in the future. Jamie, I'm definitely excited to see what you have for us next, along with Aurora too. So I'm going to bring you back up in just a little bit to chat with the group. And thank you so much for sharing your insights on character work.
Thank you.
All right. David, are you out there?
I am out here.
Hello. Uh, David, thank you for joining us as our final author in our discussions. Let me introduce you formally to our audience. David Peterson has written multiple mysteries, all featuring LGBTQ characters. He's a two-time finalist for the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Mysteries. His second book, Death Goes Overboard, was selected by the GLBT Roundtable of the American Library Association for 2018 over the Rainbow Book List. Two of his poems, My Candle and I Never Knew, were used in the 2024 OCTC stage production of Love Notes Cabaret of Words and Music. He and his husband and their sweet rescue cats reside in the sunny Southwest, uses pronouns he, him. Hi, David. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I am happy to be here. It's great company. I think we should all get together and have tea and martinis.
I would love it. I'm in for that. So I just want to leap right in where I'm keeping an eye on the time to make sure we can get all of our discussion going. So I just want to say, discuss your favorite characters with us. Tell us what makes them interesting.
Oh, my favorite characters. Oh my gosh. Yeah. How do I choose just a few? I love them all, even the evil ones. Sometimes the evil ones are even the most fun. But if I had to narrow it down, in no particular order, I would say Aunt Verbena, from the Heath Barrington series. Heath Barrington himself, he's awesome. Mason Adler, Walter Wingate from the Mason Adler series, Skip and Henry from Puzzles Can Be Deadly, and of course Mark and Milo from my latest one, Fatal Foul Play.
Oh wow. Well, that sounds like a very eclectic group. I like that you've put them all together there.
Yes, very eclectic. Verbena is probably my all-time favorite.
Okay.
She's also a fan favorite of a lot of people. Um, she's in all of the seven Heath Barrington books. She's Heath's aunt.
Hmm.
and she's often been a sounding board for him. She's kind of curmudgeonly, and,
Yeah.
but she's really loving, and she's a little befuddled sometimes, but she's also very wise. And Heath, on the other hand, he's young, he's handsome, he's a snappy dresser, very clever.
Yeah.
He's a very good detective, and he's definitely the kind of person that I would like to be. Uh, and I would have loved to have had an aunt like Verbena growing up. She's a good contrast to Heath's mother, who is annoying, meddling, and often rather obtuse.
Yeah.
So he's a fun character, and she's a blast to write. And then of course Mason Adler, he's a little bit different than Heath. He's in the three subsequent mystery books. He's a private detective. He's older than Heath. He's definitely more mature. He's single, and he's not really looking for a relationship. He wouldn't say no, I don't think, if something came along, but he's not really looking for anything in particular. And his friend Walter is a kook. Walter is very eccentric. He's flamboyant. He's sometimes not too bright.
Mhm.
He loves younger men. And he's probably what we would describe today as high maintenance. But he is devoted to Mason, and he's a very loyal friend. Um,
Okay.
Honorable mention to the Mason Adler series would also go to Lydia Detling. She's his downstairs neighbor and his friend. She is a loyal, strong, independent woman and a very good foil for Mason. And I love that she's not always searching for a man to fulfill her, as she has a fulfilling life already. And then I think I mentioned Skip and Henry from Puzzles Can Be Deadly. They're very young. They're very in love. They're smart, clever. Henry's really patient and wise with Skip. Um, I don't think they're naive. They make a good crime fighting, mystery solving team, and I like their romance and their friendship a lot. And then last but not least would be the Mark and Milo characters from my first contemporary mystery. All my other books are set mostly in the 40s. Um, so my first contemporary book was Fatal Foul Play, and that's where Mark and Milo are from. They're really two dear friends that don't realize how much they mean to each other until it's almost too late. They're mature, animal lovers, they're kind, and a bit bitchy.
Yeah.
It was fun to create characters who live and exist in the present day that can talk about things
Yeah.
like prep and monogamy and sex, openly. So that was kind of that was a different book for me. I enjoyed doing it, but I think the historical books are still my favorite.
So you would say that you enjoy creating the contemporary characters more than the historical ones?
No, I think I had fun doing it.
Hmm.
But I think I definitely think that's a hard question. I'm definitely more comfortable writing historical fiction and
Yeah.
creating those types of characters. So I will definitely return to that with my next project.
So I would say, how are these characters alike and different from each other besides the time periods?
Um, hmm. Well, for the most part, I think Mark and Milo are the only ones that exist in the different era.
Hmm.
As I said, the other ones are all from the 40s and 50s. Um, but with all of them, there are definitely similarities and differences. Some, like Aunt Verbena and Lydia, are heterosexual. The others are not. Some are older, some are younger, some are in committed relationships, some are single. But the one thing I think they all have in common, I would say, is that they're decent people. They work hard, they try to do the right thing. Somehow, they all end up solving murders,
Uh,
or helping the main protagonist to, at any rate.
so of those listed, which would you say is your all-time favorite?
Oh, my all-time favorite. Um, I guess I would have to say my favorite character to write and create, anyway, was Walter Wingate from the Mason Adler books. He was definitely fun to write. And when I first created him, I actually had the intention that he was going to be the murderer in the first Mason Adler book, Murder on Monte Vista. He was definitely bitchy, sarcastic, narcissistic, flamboyant, and really kind of mean. Readers hated him. But I had so much fun with him and with his dialogue that I decided not to have him be the killer, and I ended up bringing him back in the two subsequent Mason Adler books. And in those two, especially Murder at the Oasis, which is the third one, the reader will see a softer side to Walter, and they get to learn a lot of his backstory, along with Mason's. And I heard from readers that they absolutely despised Walter in the first book, but they grew to really like him after the third. And for me, that was really rewarding to create a character who is deeply flawed, but still likable and even lovable.
Have any of your characters, evolved or changed?
Oh, evolved or changed? Not to the extent Walter has. And he really didn't change so much as I allowed the reader to get to know him and to learn why he sometimes is the way he is. He's a very human character. And Heath Barrington, in contrast, is almost too perfect. He's not without a few flaws of his own, but I sometimes think it would be fun to write a book, maybe set in the mid 1950s, with Heath and Alan, Verbena, Skip, Henry, Walter, and Mason all coming together to solve a crime as a group. Mark and Milo couldn't be in it, of course, because they weren't even born in the 50s. But maybe I'll work on something like that. Could be fun.
Well, it does sound like a lot of fun. And I want to ask you about your next project. But before I do that, I want to bring everybody else back because we're getting short on time. So I want to kind of pose that question to everyone. So if you could flip your cameras on. And so David, I'll send it to you first. Tell us about your next project, and then I'll kind of go down the line, and then we might be out of time. We'll see about that.
Okay, I'll talk fast. My next book will be out this June, and it's entitled A Marvelous Murder. It's set in Hollywood in 1939, and it has some terrific characters in it that will definitely be added to my favorites list, including Victor Marvel, an aging closeted gay movie star, his young movie star boyfriend, and a pretty clever actress who also acts as Victor's beard.
All right. Michelle, tell us what you have coming up next.
Yeah, I'm working on a book called Give Me Your Hand, which is out in the autumn. It's, I guess, an age gap romance, opposites attract, about a climber that's sort of washed up and holed up in a Scottish sort of stately home, and a ghostwriter is assigned to help her write her autobiography, and they kind of clash, but not all the way through.
I love it. Jamie, I know you're busy because you got the places that you're traveling to, but are you still writing? Do you have a project coming up?
Yeah, I'm writing so randomly I'm writing a story set in Tahoe. So not set in Costa Rica, but working on a sex party book.
Ah, awesome. Well, we will look out for that one. Anne, what about you?
I'm currently working on a Western that takes place in Mexico and has the Underground Railroad going into Mexico as the premise.
That's amazing. We will be on the lookout for that. And Kathy?
I am currently working on a historical novel set on a tiny Scottish island in about the 18th century, and that's about as far as I've got with it.
I love the historicals. They're a favorite of mine. Well, everyone, that brings us exactly to time. I wish we had had more time to continue delving into these characters, but you've introduced me to so many that I want to investigate and check out and read their journeys. If you take a look at the chat bar once again, there's a link there for you to pick up 20% off select books from the Bookathon and from the authors who participated. We have more panels coming up, more readings coming up for the rest of the day, so check out the schedule and see which ones you might want to hop on. I want to thank my panelists for chatting with me today, and to thank the audience as well. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and until next time,
See you guys.
thank you so much.
Thank you.